Hey everybody, and welcome to Dennis from Scratch. Today I'm going to show you how to make some fluffy buttermilk pancakes. This recipe will start with the dry ingredients. We're going to go over what they are. First off, I have a quarter cup of turbinado sugar, and I use turbinado sugar because it's less processed than white sugar. It still has most or a lot of the molasses in it, which the molasses is what has all of the vitamins that are essential for breaking down sugar. So when you take that out and you're just left with the white sugar, then you're actually losing a lot of nutrients when you're eating it because it takes a lot to digest the sugar. So this is a little bit more balanced and it's going to be healthier for us. So we've got a quarter cup of sugar in here, and now we're going to take a cup of flour. And over here, I've got some Bob's Red Mill flour. I like this brand a lot. I've always been pleased with the quality. But the important part is that we're using 100% whole grain flour. If we're just gonna use white flour, then again, all the nutrients have been taken out during the refining process, just like with the sugar, and we're gonna be at a nutrient loss when we eat it. So if we use the whole wheat flour, then we still have the wheat germ, we still have the wheat hull, which has all the fiber, and that's going to help our body digest it. So that's why we're using the whole wheat flour. And now I'm going to put that into little metal sieves so we can sift it, and add in a teaspoon of baking soda here. And lastly, for our dry ingredients, I'm going to add a quarter teaspoon of salt. And we'll use this later, so I'm going to set it aside. And we're just going to kind of mix these in here and sift it. This is to make sure that we don't have any clumps later on in our pancakes, especially clumps of baking soda, because baking soda is bitter and it really ruins the experience when you get a little clump of baking soda. To just a little bit of salt, we got some large salt grains in there, and I see one little clump of baking soda, which we can break up, and the salt crystals, we can just toss those. All right, so now that we have a very fine mixture in here, I'm just gonna use a wire whisk to incorporate that sugar. And we didn't put the sugar in the sift because the sugar crystals are too large. So they wouldn't have gone through the holes. All right, so now that we have our dry ingredients all mixed together, I'm gonna set this aside. We're going to do our wet ingredients. So we're going to start with just one egg, and when you're buying your eggs, you can look for cage-free or free range, but sometimes it's a little bit misleading in the way that they market them. So what I've found is the best way to check for quality eggs is just to crack one open when you get home and check to see how dark the yolk is. If the yolk is really pale and light yellow, kind of like this color of the butter here, then it's a low quality egg and the chicken didn't get much sun, they didn't get the proper nutrients. But if the egg is nice and rich, the yolk here is really rich in color, then that means that the chicken was outside, it was pecking, and it's going to be a much higher quality egg, both taste-wise and nutrient-wise. So I've used my wire whisk here just to whisk up the egg. We got it real light and fluffy. And now I'm going to add in a cup plus a couple tablespoons of sour milk or buttermilk. And I'm using fresh or raw milk. I get it from a local farmer around here. It can be kind of difficult to find raw milk or fresh milk because a lot of the time they can't sell it at stores. So if you can source it, it's much better for you because the pasteurization process kind of breaks down the proteins. But if you can't, buttermilk works too, or you can add a little bit of vinegar or lemon juice to fresh milk, and that turns it into buttermilk. And then I'm just going to whisk this together. I'm going to add in a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And vanilla extract, just make sure that it has 3 ingredients. You should see water, alcohol, and extractives of vanilla bean or vanilla bean extractives. If it has more ingredients than that, then it's got fillers and it's probably lower quality. Whisk this together. And finally, I I have 3 tablespoons of melted butter. And make sure you're using actual butter and not margarine or butter substitute, something labeled along those lines, because most of those are going to have canola oil or soybean oil or some kind of polyunsaturated oil is what it's called. Any vegetable or most vegetable oils, they're really high in oils that are difficult for our body to digest. So I'm using butter here, which is a really simple saturated fat, and it's easy for our body to break down. And fun fact, it's also necessary for, it has the nutrients necessary for breaking down the flour that we're going to be putting into the pancakes. And I'm going to whisk this together now. Okay, so now I've got this all combined together, all the wet ingredients. Now I'm going to add in the dry ingredients. And I'm just kind of slowly mix them in while I'm whisking. It's just easier to combine this way. Make sure you scrape along the sides to get all that flour that's stuck up on the sides incorporated. Okay, and just mix it until it's well combined. We don't want to over mix it, otherwise it's going to kind of start to clump together or become kind of gloopy. We want it to be a little bit runny. And right now it's a little bit less runny than I like. It's a little bit too stiff. So I'm going to add a little bit of milk and just add a couple tablespoons, 1 or 2 tablespoons at a time until it's the right consistency. All right, and that looks about right. And the consistency, that really depends on your own preference. I like it to be about so runny, so when you kind of lift up your whisk, it takes just a second for it to fall off. The thinner your batter, the more runny it is, the thinner your pancakes are gonna be. Okay, well I'm done with my whisk now. I'm gonna grab my scoop that I saved from earlier. This is what we're gonna use to scoop into the pans, and we're gonna go cook them. Okay, so now we're over by pans. We got a griddle and we got a second frying pan ready to go. We're going to use these on our large burners, and we'll turn them to about medium or medium low heat. And we'll let these heat up. And while they're heating up, I'm going to use a little bit of bacon fat. You can also use lard or coconut oil. I've just got a paper towel that I'm rubbing it on there, and once these get a little bit warm, I'm going to just kind of rub it around the pan. That way there's not too much grease in the pan. Should be just right if we use this paper towel to spread it around. Just lightly greasing it. To test our pans to see when they're ready, I'm going to sprinkle a few drops of water on them. Oh. In this one here, you can see the water droplets, or you can hear them scattering around. That means it's perfect. This one just needs a couple seconds longer to finish heating up. So using our scoop, I'm going to scoop about 1/3 to 1/2 cup of batter right onto the pan here and kind of spread it around a little. I'm going to test this one again. And that is perfect. And it won't be long before you start to notice some bubbles coming up to the surface of your pancake and then kind of popping. Once you see those bubbles starting to stay, we can see a couple bubbles here, here. These ones are lasting longer. So that means our pancake is just about ready to flip. You can kind of test it using a wide spatula. If you can easily get it underneath, that means that the pancake is ready. And after a little bit, we'll just test our pancake by flipping it over to make sure that this side's done, which it is, which means that this pancake is ready. Before adding another pancake, we'll have to test the pan again. You can see the pan's a little bit too hot, so we'll have to remove that from heat for just a moment. And over here, I was a little bit ambitious before, and I didn't wait long enough to flip it. I wasn't able to get my spatula all the way underneath, and you can see, created a mess. But don't worry, because this here, while we can't serve it because it looks terrible, I can eat it. Now that that pan's cooled a little bit, we'll test it again. And that is just about right. So we'll keep going with the process. If you're making a lot of pancakes and you want to keep them warm while you're cooking the others, I like to heat my temperature in the oven to about 200, 250 maybe, and then I'll line my platter with a wet paper towel or wet tea towel, and then just kind of layer pancakes in between these wet towels, and it keeps them warm in the oven, but the towels keep them from going dry. So it's a really good option if you're cooking a lot of pancakes and it's going to take you a while. And there you go. That's how you make fluffy buttermilk pancakes. Top them with a little bit of butter, some honey, or some maple syrup, and then you're all set. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe for more tips and recipes, and that's it.